So UFC 303 went down the weekend before the last because we didn't have a UFC last week. And I got 2 out of 3. Got the MVP Ian Gary fight spot on, to be fair, to the T. I called it. And then I got Pereira versus Prohaska 2 right. I said 3rd round TKO, but, you know, Yuri Prohaska didn't make any of the changes that we thought he was going to make, so he got chinned again. I think that was pretty clear cut. I mean, Alex Pereira is he's just on another level, really, striking-wise, compared to these other guys. And then Smith versus Dolidze, I did get that one wrong, but you know what? Like, Smith looked absolutely awful in that fight. I do think picking Smith was the logical choice, so I'm not too butthurt that I got that one wrong. But coming up, we have Rose Namajunas versus Tracey Cortez. And I think, you know, this is actually a really good card. When I first looked at it, you know, I peeked the main event and, you know, I was like, oh my God. Like, I do like Rose Namajunas, don't get me wrong, but when you get a women's a women's flyweight main event, you sort of just approach the card with a bit of hesitation. You're like, oh no. But they've actually loaded some really, really good fights on the undercard and the main card. Usually I just go for the main card predictions, but I thought, you know, let's get into the science of it. Let's get into the early prelims, the prelims, see if there's any cool fights we can cover. I think it's just prelims and main event, but there's some good fights on this card, so I'm actually really, really excited. So the first fight I'm going to cover is Montel Jackson versus Blackshear. Now, I've seen Montel Jackson in his last few fights. He's been a little bit inactive. I think he might be dealing with some injuries because we saw his last 3 fights have been cancelled. Blackshear is coming off a loss to Mario Bautista. And to be fair, Blackshear, he's been looking decent in his fights. He's a huge bantamweight. He's got decent striking, quite good wrestling. You know, he does usually manage to get it down, but I think one of the issues I've noticed about Blackshear is he just doesn't seem to be able to control the pace of the fight. He always seems sort of a step behind his opponents. I mean, if you watch him against Farid Basharat, and of course, Farid is top tier. Like, I genuinely see some real potential out of Farid Basharat, so it's not the worst loss. And Mario Bautista, same thing, you know, not a super powerful striker, but really, really good wrestling. And that kind of got nullified by Damon going for some of those takedowns. But when you watch him against Basharat, he was getting reversed and he was going for the takedowns, ended up on bottom, spent most of the fight on the bottom and didn't really show an ability to reverse positions or get back up. So it does worry me that he's getting, you know, beaten on the feet by the likes of Mario Bautista and then out-grappled by Farid. You think Montel Jackson, really calm, collected fighter. He sort of keeps the range, counters you coming in, and is a very, very low output fighter. It's a bit of a hard watch watching some of his fights. But he does seem to have the cleaner striking. He comes from a wrestling background. He didn't compete in the Olympics or Division 3 or anything, but he was a high school wrestler, which is always a good sort of base for MMA, I guess. He spent a lot of time working on his striking. So I think Montel in this fight, he's going to be the cleaner striker. I think he should be able to either reverse or defend the takedowns. And I see him probably winning the fight by decision. Now, the next fight on the card is Andrei Petroski versus Josh Fremd. Now, both of these fighters are coming off losses. I think Petroski, he's good, but he's got this old style of MMA where it's sort of like you duck down and you're either shooting or you're whopping a huge hook or an overhand. Now, just because it's an outdated style doesn't mean it doesn't work. There's definitely some efficacy in mixing up the takedowns with the striking. It's sort of the old meta. And you've noticed in his last fight, he sort of ran onto that knee and got KO'd, looked a bit silly. But I think that was sort of more of a freak accident than anything to do with his opponent. I think Josh Fremd is a bit gumpy with his striking. He's not super fast. He's not super technical. He's a bit slow, and I think the big hooks and takedowns of Andrei Petroski should give him the edge in this fight. I think Andrei Petroski is going to be able to mix up those big hooks and big overhands with the takedowns, and I think he sort of ends up getting a lay and pray decision. Next on the card is Juicy J versus Christian Rodriguez. Now, just looking at a couple of Christian Rodriguez's fights, He's been winning quite consistently. He looks really good over the distance. He's got nice fundamental boxing and good takedown defense. So I love Juicy J. I think he's got such a creative and unique style. Really, really good at submissions and doesn't necessarily go to it enough. I feel like if he mixed in the wrestling a little bit more, it would protect that chin from taking so much damage. Because the thing about Juicy J, you know, he's got like 26 wins and 13 losses. He doesn't have a lot of power. He likes to get into these crazy exchanges. I mean, when he fought Steven Peterson, he just looked very hittable. And I just think against a fundamental boxer who's good on his feet, like he's got good footwork, I think it's going to be a little bit too much for Juicy J, and I think he's going to get chinned. He just doesn't have the chin to hold up to the damage. But I do really like him as a fighter. It's just looking for that win, I just think is tough for him. He's just so inconsistent. But, you know, I'm going to go Christian Rodriguez by second round TKO. Now, Joshua Van versus Charles Johnson. This is an interesting fight. Joshua Van is 22 and he's coming in as quite a hyped prospect. I've not seen anyone in the flyweight division with better body shots than Joshua Van. He's got a really nice pressure boxing style. He's got a pretty decent chin, comes in behind the jab, you know, throws a couple of 1-2s and then starts ripping the body early. Now that is such a good sign from a young MMA fighter to be working the body. I think the guy's got a lot of potential in the future. I definitely see him being top 10 in the future. I just think Charles Johnson is just a bit too much too soon. This is a real test to see if Joshua Van is going to be able to compete at the highest level. And I just feel like the well-roundedness and experience of Charles Johnson, I mean, he's 33, he's in the prime of his career. I just see him being able to get, like he did in his last 2 wins, he's just going to get that veteran performance where, you know, he's landing the body kicks, he's landing the low kicks. I think he's got nice, quick, sort of low-hand counters. I think he should be able to stuff the takedowns. I like Joshua Van in the later rounds. If he gets past that first round, I see him probably getting hurt and caught a bit in the first round. But then I could see him start to take over the fight. And I could see this being a really good fight where Joshua Van pressures him in round 2, starts wearing on Johnson with the takedowns, the body work, mixing it all up with the boxing. And then I could see him potentially winning a decision, getting 2 out of the 3. But I'm going to go with the experience of Charles Johnson. I'm picking the underdog here, and I'm going to go by decision. Now, Drew Dober versus Jean Silva. I really like Drew Dober. I think he's such a top-class guy. You know, he's got really nice striking, really good power. He also rips the body really, really well. I just think John Silva, he's so confident, he's so calm, he knows he's got absolute lethal power in that left and right hand, and he knows if he lands on you, it's game over. And the chin of Drew Dober has been hit quite a lot. You know, he gets dropped in quite a lot of his fights, and I just think if he takes a clean one off John Silva, it's going to be too much for him, and I think he gets chinned. So I'm going to go with a first round TKO for John Silva. Drew Dober's going to come forward, he's going to throw at him, but I do see John Silva actually getting quite an early knockout counter. I think he's just going to slip off that straight, come back with a left hook and just chin him, to be honest with you. Tough fight for Drew Dober. I really hope he pulls through, but I'm going to have to go with John Silva in this fight. Now, we've got Gabriel Bonfim versus Ange Loosa. I like Loosa. He's a little bit sort of not great at anything. He's got decent takedowns, decent striking. He's got quite a good chin and good cardio. He's quite high up on the attributes list, but in terms of technical ability, he does seem like he's a bit of a step behind Gabriel Bonfim. So Bonfim in his last outing had a really, really difficult time with Nicolas Dalby. Nicolas Dalby put the pressure on him, made the fight dirty, and ended up finishing him. Now, I think Bonfim is going to be the type of fighter, you know, he was undefeated, he had all that confidence, all that belief. This is going to humble him, and I think he's going to come into the fight with a much more calculated, measured game plan. And I think the striking, the grappling, Bonfim should, on paper, win this fight, as long as he makes those adjustments that he needed to make from the fight with Nicolas Dalby. And I'm going to go with Bonfim by a decision. I'm going to go with Bonfim by decision. I think he's got the better striking, the better submissions, and I think just the speed and the technique on the feet. If he stays calm, I think he's going to be able to pick apart Loosa on the feet all day. So the final fight for the main card is Rose Namajunas versus Tracey Cortez. I think this one's pretty easy to predict. Namajunas, I think she's more skilled everywhere. Better striking, better grappling, better takedowns. I think she's more experienced. She knows how to take punches. She knows how to move really well. She's so good at closing that distance. And you see when fighters fight Namajunas for the first time, it really throws them off. The ability of her to just come in with that quick 1-2, that counter left hook. She's really dangerous on the feet. Fantastic submissions. The only thing that I really dislike about Rose Namajunas is her head coach, Pat Barry. I mean, Pat Barry just gives the worst corner advice. Bring back my boy, Trevor Whitman. Why is Rose Namajunas not working with Trevor Whitman? I mean, she just looked so much more polished, clean. The corner advice was spot on. Trevor Whitman knows how to calm a fighter down in the corner. He knows exactly what to say. And I think Rose dropping Trevor was honestly one of the worst moves she could have made. But Tracey Cortez, she's good. She's not great. I think tough fight for Tracey Cortez. I think she gets pieced up on the feet. I could see Rose winning a decision. I could see her getting a TKO, or I could see Tracey going for a bad shot, getting her back taken and strangled. So I'm going to go with Rose Namajunas by a 3rd round submission in this fight. And yeah, that's my picks for the week. I'll be putting my prediction percentage in the top left-hand corner, so you guys are aware how many fights I've got wrong, how many fights I've got wrong. We might end up splitting it into confident, not confident picks, and maybe doing a category of ones where I've got the exact prediction and winner correct. I think that might be quite cool. But yeah, stay tuned for more picks, and I'll see you next week.